Welcome everyone to Marrying FME and ArcGIS, automating GIS workflows for maximum efficiency. So we're very pleased today to be joined by our two special guest speakers, and I'll hand things over to Stephanie to introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Stephanie Long. I am a professor of GIS, Geographic Information Systems, at Austin Community College. At Austin Community College, we offer a Level 1 and Level 2 certificate that are fully GIS coursework. We also offer an associate's degree in GIS, which has additional coursework alongside that GIS coursework. We're pleased to know that our alumni are employed at well-known public sector and private sector entities where they are shaping the future of the GIS industry. And something that we emphasize in our program is the need to automate GIS workflows, not only to save time and money, but to prevent the boredom of those tedious tasks that the computer can do for you. So let it do it for you. So we teach automation techniques like ModelBuilder, tasks, and Python. But one of my favorites, and that I'm here to share with you today, is FME and that integration with the ArcGIS data interoperability extension. So thank you for being here. It's great to see you all. I see some familiar names and people attending from all over the world. So thank you very much for being here. And please ask lots of questions.
Hi, everybody. I'm Mike Long. I am the Geospatial Technologies Program Manager at CapMetro. Stephanie asked me to do this presentation with her many months back. Honestly, I think I'm just really here for the puns so that the title works out right. If you haven't figured it out, yes, we are married. I have a lot of experience, day-to-day experience with FME, both at my previous employer and my current employer. I use it every day, hundreds of workbenches that I've created over the years. And I'd like to point out that I am here on behalf of myself. I'm not here on behalf of CapMetro. And so the things I say are my own opinion today. But I'm glad everybody can join. It's nice to see everybody.
Yeah. And my name's Don Murray. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Save Software, and I get to work with an amazing group of people, an amazing group of customers, and and welcome, and hopefully you find this very informative. I know I've learned a lot.
Awesome. All right, thank you so much to you three. So just before we hand things over to Stephanie, I'll just briefly introduce our platform here today in case you're new to Livestorm. So we have the help button on the bottom left. So if you have any audio or video issues throughout, please click that help button for 4 simple steps to take. You can share your emoji reactions with us during the webinar. We love to see those. And I've seen already some people have started to do that. So under that react button, we do have a poll coming up. So keep an eye on that polls tab. And then the questions tab. So as Stephanie mentioned, if you have any questions throughout, please do drop those in the questions tab, and we'll be able to get to some of those during the webinar, and also if there's time remaining at the end. And then lastly, the chat. Keep letting us know where you're tuning in from, and leave any comments that you might have for us throughout there. All right. And then briefly, I'll note as well, if you do wish to download the slides to follow along live, you can now do so under the handouts under apps there, or you can download directly with the top right button on the deck here.
Perfect.
All right, with that, I'll hand things over to Dawn to go through our agenda. And now is a good point as well. If I can get our presenters to turn off their webcams, that'll just help us save on some bandwidth for the rest of the webinar here.
Great. Yeah, so here's the agenda. At the beginning, I'll just spend a few minutes setting the stage on FME and ArcGIS. And then right away, then I'll hand it off to Stephanie, and some of the topics that her and Mike are going to go through will be data automation in ArcGIS, Python and JSON and Workbench, spatial data and automations, and Mike and Stephanie both mentioned the power of automations. And then we'll go through some resources and some Q&A. I think right away we're going to start with a poll, though, aren't we, Elizabeth?
Yes, I will go ahead and launch that now. So you can now find that under the polls tab. I'll give everyone a moment. Yeah, it'll be neat to see what everyone's experience level is so far with FME. All right, we've already got most votes here, and it looks over 70% have yet to begin either working with FME or are quite new, have been working with FME for just up to a few years, 1 to 3 years now.
So, yeah, so that's great.
Fantastic. Thanks everyone for placing your vote there.
Okay, so now I will spend a few minutes just, setting the stage. This is super high level. So for the 80 or 90 people who have yet to use FME, I think this is really will give you a foundation on how ArcGIS and FME can work together. So first of all, I'm sure everybody here knows about ArcGIS. It really is the most trusted and comprehensive platform in GIS or geospatial technology. The vast majority of our customers who have FME also have ArcGIS, and those two things working together are amazing. And here are just some of the things that ArcGIS does, right? I'm not going to pretend that this is an all-encompassing, thing about what ArcGIS does, but let's just say it's an amazingly powerful tool that anything spatial, it can really, really handle it. And what about FME? FME, whereas ArcGIS is an amazing GIS data, spatial data platform, FME lives in the enterprise integration or data integration space, competing with the likes of Informatica, Del Boomi, Talend, and the various sort. And it is the only one that actually understands spatial data. So if you have any spatial data in ArcGIS and you want to connect that to other things, this is where FME really, really shines. So it has unmatched interoperability. So if you have other systems, spatial or not, within your organization, it can connect to them. Automation, a big part of FME is this FME flow, which is all about automations. And they can be triggered by a time, or they can be triggered by an event. Also real-time processing, whether that be events or streams. And again, FME, one of the things it has is a no-code interface. We spend a lot of time on that. It does also have the ability for you to use Python or Java and things like that. And we're going to talk a bit about that today. And of course, we have this thing called FME Hub, in which our community of over 200,000 people continually extend FME. And yeah, so that's what FME is about. Like ArcGIS, there's also an education grant program. So any education organization or students who would like to use FME as either for learning or part of their studies can get a copy of FME complimentary. And then now you bring those two together, and now it really gets exciting because now you have industry-leading spatial capabilities, and you have the ability to connect that easily across your environment. And these two things working together really are an amazing platform together. Seamless integration, but so then between ArcGIS and the rest of your environment. They're both scalable, so it doesn't matter how big your data gets. They can both scale. And again, and then you can automate, and automation is front and center. And then with this, you can really make smarter decisions because you can now bring all your enterprise data together. Together, you can imagine decisions powered by FME's seamless integration of ArcGIS and the rest of your enterprise. That's really what these two things working together is. When you do that, it's not about maps, it's not about data. It's about enabling organizations to get better insights. And we see a lot of organizations who bring these things together, actually leading the organization to get new insights. And and so that's really what these two best of class tools do when they work together. So and here's the platform. It consists of two major components powered by an engine. FME Form is also sold by Esri as the data interoperability extension. It's really the authoring environment where for workflows are built. You can also automate them within the Esri environment. Within the FME environment, we have this tool called FME Flow that adds automation and data sharing capabilities. And then there's also a Flow hosted, which you can think about as like an ArcGIS online. And unrivaled data support is really one of the things that separates us from everybody else, as well as a no-code interface. And with all of that, I'm going to pass it off to Stephanie.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much. Welcome. Thank you for being here. The GIS analysis workflow that you might be familiar with consists of the question and form, analyze, evaluate, and present. Those are the steps in the common GIS analysis workflow. So what question are you trying to answer? What do you need to answer the question? How will you analyze the data? What geoprocessing is needed? Then when you get your results, you don't just accept them as truth, you evaluate them. At that point, you might update your question, gather new data, or modify your analysis. Then once you're satisfied with the results, you present your findings to the intended audience. The workflow is often completed manually, but there are times when you will want to automate steps in the process or automate the entire process, which is always nice. A wide range of options are available to you as a GIS professional seeking to automate common workflows. My experience with automating my GIS workflows includes utilizing ModelBuilder, Python, and FME, among others. Workflows where automation using FME is appropriate include when project data is acquired or stored in several various formats and locations. Not only can FME automation help save you time, it can also ensure data quality through attribute and feature filters and comparisons that are available. What's nice is that FME can even download your project data directly from the source website. It can extract a zip file, put it into your project folder, and even visualize the features directly in the application. All of this integration and automation leads to a faster completion of the data collection and the data assimilation tasks of a GIS project. And that leads me to data automation in ArcGIS. So this here, the screenshot is showing how you access the data interoperability extension in ArcGIS Pro and how you access the workbench. So FME is an application that allows you to import, convert, and write data from source locations to target systems or formats, and you do that in the workbench. ETL stands for extract, transform, and load. This refers to 3 separate functions that get combined into a single tool or execution of a series of tools. So the workbench will extract what it needs, the data, and read it from a specified source. Then you can enter in different transformers, which have functions that convert the data, and you can set up the rules on how that data conversion takes place and even create new data. And then the load portion writes that resulting data out to the location where you want it and the file format that you prefer. So in ArcGIS Pro, this is accessed through the ArcGIS Data Interoperability extension. It is a separate application that opens up and allows you to conduct that ETL. We've been saying FME. FME stands for Feature Manipulation Engine. So in Pro, you can integrate the workbench through that extension. So the analysis ribbon over in the workflows group, then the drop down for data interop, and in there you'll find the workbench. When you click the workbench, that button there under data interop, FME opens in a new window. This is a standalone application with its own helpful interface features. At the top are the traditional menus, toolbars that you can access the setting and tools through. The main stage, if you will, is the canvas. This is where you will author your ETL workflows. The navigators allow you to see what your workbench workflow includes, a summary of the workflow and the settings. The transformer gallery is where you will find over 600 transformers. I know that might sound a little daunting, but if you think about it, ArcGIS Pro has over 600 geoprocessing tools. So it makes sense. And I'm sure this is true for you, but in my 20 years of GIS experience, I have never used all 600 of those geoprocessing tools. So find the ones that you need for the GIS analysis workflow or the data transformation workflow that you are currently working on. And just as in ModelBuilder, FME workbenches allow you to author, to edit, and adjust the parameters of your workflow. If you've ever used the Python window in ArcGIS Pro, you might find the translation log familiar. If you've ever run a model in ModelBuilder, you might associate that with the message window. Then there's my favorite, which is the visual preview. This allows you to inspect features that are stored in the automation cache. view the source data location on file, and even drop files in for preview. So let's take a look at an example of that. In this example, the workbench workflow goes to a website. That website has image tiles stored there. So it compares the geographic footprint of the study area, shown in pink here, with the footprint of the tiles, shown in orange, the rectangles, and it only downloads the image tiles that overlay the study area polygon, and you can see those tiles being selected in kind of a light purple color. This study area is the intersection of Mopac Loop 1 and Slaughter Lane in far southwest Austin. The intersection was changed from a few single point interchanges to a double crossover diamond between 2018 and 2020. So the full canvas, the translation log, the visual preview, you can see all of that here. Down below, I have those two intersection images, so you can see that kind of change there. Here in the top right, you can see the attributes of the results from the string concatenator. This takes the data hub URL where the imagery is stored, and it concatenates it to create a substring of the tile number. That tile number is then used by the HTTP caller to get that specific tile because it overlaps that study area polygon. Then we have the graphic preview that shows the features of the study area shapefile, the tile index shapefile, and the tiles selected by the spatial filter transformer. So this is a workflow where you can author and tell FME what imagery you would like to download in order to use in your project. So the flow of the workbench canvas is similar to that of ModelBuilder model, starting on the left and flowing to the right by default. This example here is a workbench that loads a spreadsheet. It loads it using what's called a reader. Then the transformer in the middle there takes the coordinates in the spreadsheet and creates a vertex at each location. The last process on the right is the writer, and this is where the output workspace of the shapefile, so the location and the file type are being designated. So this is just a quick glimpse into what you may see in your canvas. So extract being the far left process, transform being the center process, and load being the process shown there on the right. So let's take a look at creating a workflow in the canvas from scratch. In the canvas, you can click and start typing the name of the transformer and pick it from the list. You can then drag and drop your file into the canvas. In this example, it's going to be an Excel spreadsheet. You can choose the different sheets or tabs that you want out of that file. Here, I'm just choosing one. So it drops it straight in the canvas, and you can move it over, and then you can connect the two. So connect the reader to the transformer. When you do that, the transformer needs parameters. So you can use the drop-down to choose the fields in the sheet that make up the coordinates that are going to be used for the vertex creation. You can also click the writer button in the toolbar and add the shapefile creation to your workflow. Here you set the workspace, the location that it's going to write out to, and preferably the coordinate system. So if you notice down at the bottom, the translation log is keeping you informed of what it's doing. When it's finished, you can connect the output port of the transformer to the input port of the writer, and it's as easy as that. So some of that workflow probably looked familiar to you if you've ever worked with ModelBuilder before, and so I did want to take a minute to discuss the similarities between those two. So on the left, we have ModelBuilder, and you have your model space. On the right, we have FME, and that space is known as the canvas, where you can see the readers, transformers, and writers there connected together. And then the two windows in the top left and the bottom, you can see the parameter settings for the different tools. So you have the same functionality there where you can open up the settings for the tool and put in more parameters, change the capabilities and what you're doing there in the tool. And both of these also have tool search capabilities and zoom functionalities. And the ever important undo. I don't know how many of you have been around for a while, but it used to be that ModelBuilder did not have an undo button. Life was really hard back then. It was not good. Things are good now. We have the undo button. All right, so here we see that in both ModelBuilder and FME, you can create groups. So in ModelBuilder, it is that yellow grouping different tools together. In FME, I have a green group and an orange group, and those are known as bookmarks. And then in ModelBuilder, you can add labels, which is basically just text that you place in the model. With FME, I got to say it's much better. You actually attach the annotation to the item. For example, my feature reader here, I have annotation read in the CSV schema, reminding myself what that reader is doing. So I want to point out one major difference between the two here, where FME really takes the trophy prize. Notice along the directional arrow connections, there are numbers. These are the number of features that passed and can move on to the next step in the workflow. So we started with a CSV file of 1,315 rows. Those rows are tested in two separate workflows, one for school-related permits and one for demolition-related permits here in the Austin area. There are 9 schools and 17 demolitions. Once we remove the duplicates, we can create the vertices from the coordinates that are stored in the CSV file and write those results out. So schools, if you look at this, the very last arrow on the right has the number 4. That's how many points were created in the map. And then if you look at demolition, there were 6. So we're filtering through the information, removing duplicates, and ending up with a spatial file that has the data that we need.
Hey, Steph, I'd like to add in a little bit on this one, if you don't mind.
Please do.
Bookmarks are actually really powerful, and I would recommend that you use them whenever you can. One of the main things that you can do with them, as you can tell, is you can use them as documentation, which is something that we all should be doing better at, I'm sure. And I know Stephanie also mentioned the annotation. You can even attach annotation to the bookmark if you want more of a block where you can type. But I find that for myself, I don't need to put a lot, and putting it in the title of the bookmark tends to be useful enough. With the bookmarks, if you notice in the upper left near the text, there's a little arrow. You can actually collapse these bookmarks. It does a couple of nice things. One, it cleans up your workbench. I will admit that I don't do that part very often. I like it open because I like to know what's going on. But the other big advantage is Stephanie mentioned the caching, that you can see where all the green magnifying glasses are. If you collapse that bookmark, then it stops caching that section. So if you don't have a lot of computer memory or hard drive space, you can limit your cache by just collapsing these bookmarks. The other thing that it allows you to do, and I use this a lot, is you can right click on the title of the bookmark and you can say disable all, which makes it really easy to disable a whole section if you're developing or testing. In fact, I will often put all of my writers off to the far right and put them all in the same bookmark so that I can easily disable them all. And then I can test and rebuild my workbench as much as I want, and I never have to worry about it writing into the database or wherever that data is going to go. The one caveat on that is if you have any sort of Python or SQL executors that are doing some things, make sure you put those with the other writers. So they could write your data just like a writer could. So you want to make sure that you're keeping track of those particular ones that may be writing actual data. Or if you're dealing with an HTTP caller that might be communicating with an API, that can write data too. So put it in that same bookmark whenever you can, and then that way it's really easy to find. That's all I have, Steph. I'll get off my soapbox now.
No, stay on it as long as you want. Those are good tips. I didn't know if you collapsed the bookmark that it wouldn't cache. That's really good to know.
I'm pretty sure that's been available for the last 2 or 3 versions. I'm sure Don could elaborate on that, but if you're using the newer versions of Form, then yeah, you have that capability.
Yeah, bookmarks are super powerful, and the caching that you're talking about also, particularly if you're hitting a database on the reading side, then every time you're running it locally, you're not hitting the database over and over again. The workbench will cache it and use it. Yeah, so there's lots of great things there. Yeah.
All right, great. Thanks, Will. Yeah, interrupt me anytime and add more.
Okay.
So I mentioned labels are seen as annotation in FME. So here I'm adding an annotation to the reader. You can see the other annotations that already exist, describing the workflow steps of that ETL process. There are several options for running the workbench as well. So you can click on the writer and choose run to this. Notice how it highlights everything in green. It lets you check a few of your parameters, and then you can click run. So I know it happened really fast, but those arrows now say 114, And by clicking on that green magnifying glass that Mike was just talking about, we're able to inspect the attributes and the features here over on the right-hand side. So I can highlight a row in the attributes. It highlights that feature in the visual preview. You can zoom to selected and get in closer to that feature. So there's zooming and panning and selecting and more. So that brings us to Python and JSON in Workbench. So ArcGIS is a spatial analysis software that does some ETL, and FME is an ETL software that works well with GIS data, really well. But integrating Python allows us for more advanced FME workflows to be integrated into our workbenches. This Python script here is integrated into a larger workbench. It allows the user to dissolve line features properly. With FME, the aggregator, shown in gray, wasn't doing the job. So it was disconnected from the workflow and replaced by what below that in blue. The aggregator created features that threw an error when they were uploaded to ArcGIS online. By bringing Python into the mix, the correct features are made with a series of GIS tools instead. And Mike, do you want to expand on this at all?
This is a modification of a particular workbench that I created a long time ago, where I was taking some lines and aggregating them, which is the equivalent of dissolving in FME, and trying to write it to AGO. And AGO did not like the fact that some of these lines were self-intersecting. And so if I dissolved it, Esri handled the self-intersecting differently, and it allowed it to write it to AGO. So in that particular case, which is a lot like this one that Stephanie has on screen that she modified for her class, is I wrote it out to a file geodatabase with a writer, then used the Python caller to pull up ArcPy. And keep in mind that if you're going to be using ArcPy, you do also have to have ArcGIS installed on that same machine. And then just use the dissolve tool and then read it back into FME using the feature reader and then write it to AGO. It takes a little bit longer, but this is one of the things that you'll see with all of this is whenever I run that particular workbench, I just hit the run button. Sure, it might take a few seconds longer, but I only did one click and then I went off and started doing something else. So that's the power of automation. Even if it takes a little bit longer to process, it's not longer for you to do the effort. You can go do something else while it's processing. So that's my piece, Steph. You can go on.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you. All right, so I mentioned that FME works with over 450 data formats. Over 600 transformers are in here. But one of the formats you can work with is JSON. In this example, the creator kicks off the workflow to allow the HTTP caller to go out to a website and grab a JSON file. Then the JSON fragmenter filters through the information in the JSON, which you can see an example of in the top right image over there. It places the information into a table and it has the proper column headings. So now let's take a look at this workbench in action. So here we have several transformers. They're all bookmarked into a group called source data. The creator, HTTP caller, JSON fragmenter, the vertex creator, and you can hover over the different transformers here and see more information in that little pop-up. Finally, we have the coordinate system setter. The one JSON file here creates 100 records with an output of a properly formatted table and points on the map. These results can be inspected right away and bring to my attention that there are attributes, such as response body, that I don't really need in my final output. So creation instance, response body, status codes, there's fields in here that I don't need. So I can select them and hit the minus sign, and that's going to remove them from the output that gets created. And then at the end here, if I click on that final step, notice how you can move things around and adjust the way your canvas looks. I can click run to this, make sure my parameter is set correctly, and you can see those features come through in the arrows. I can also go directly to information about that output. So again, here we see the attributes and the features. Over on the right-hand side is more feature information and the attributes that came through after that attribute manager was added to the workflow. Another nice thing is that in the workbench, you can click the button and it takes you directly to your source location. Mike, did you want to add anything about that?
Yeah, so in the bottom, you'll notice that Stephanie had a map, and that, of course, is great for you to confirm that you're getting your spatial data to align correctly. I would recommend that if you plan on writing your data into one of Esri's products, Portal or AGO, that you go ahead and use one of their base maps. It's a great way to confirm that you set your projection correctly. And that way, when you get it up onto your web map or anything like that, you know that it's going to align properly.
All right, great. So that brings us to spatial data and automations. You have a workbench. You can create a spatial ETL tool in ArcGIS that calls that workspace. The spatial ETL tools are user-created geoprocessing tools that can transform data between different data models and different file formats. You can create them with FME Workbench in a translation workspace and save them in a toolbox. So initiating the creation of a spatial ETL tool will open up the FME Workbench application, and you can define the data source, the data destination, and really diagram that data workflow. You can add connectors, insert transformers, and even edit parameters. So you can run your workbench manually. As I've shown, manual triggers allow you to test a workflow before allowing it to run automatically based on a real trigger. You can also schedule actions to kick off jobs, or you can use triggers to take action. So triggers are designed to listen for external events, such as a directory modification or an email to kick off an action. FME flow can be configured to receive emails. Once received, there's an automated trigger that can kick off the workflow that you've designated. It can monitor directories for updates like adding, changing, or deleting of files. And then another trigger option utilizes webhooks to take action with like HTTP post, put, or delete request messages with JSON. Mike, did you want to expand on that at all?
I'll be honest, for myself, I use the schedule as my primary mechanism of executing my jobs on FME flow. I have to think about it still. I'm not used to the FME form flow as opposed to desktop and server. So I'm getting there. So server became flow, and it will process your stuff based on a schedule. You can even set up recurring schedules. I want this to go every 5 seconds or every night. And that's typically how I do it. But I will admit that the email functionality and the directory watcher are super powerful. The directory watcher allows you to point FME flow at a particular folder, say on your network. And if a file changes or gets created there, then it kicks off the workbench that you designate for it to go through. Could take that file and zip it up and email it off to somebody. Since we're talking about email, that's another powerful one. We particularly have an email address specifically set up for FME flow, and it goes out and it checks that email inbox. When it finds that a new email, it has all the metadata about it, who it came from, what the subject line is, who it's sent to, whether or not there's an attachment, even gets the body. And then with that information, we send it through what's called a controller workbench. It reads the metadata about it. This came from this particular company and it has this particular zip file, and it sends it to another workbench. If it has a different company and maybe something else, then it sends it to a different workbench. And so it acts as controller is what it's called. So it just moves it between the different workbenches depending on what is there. So somebody asked a little bit about the terms that we're using, things like writers and SQL executors and what they mean. Don did answer that, but I wanted to elaborate on this a little bit more. So in the beginning, Stephanie talked a little bit about the extract, transform, load. And so you have this ETL thought process that is a standard kind of IT mechanism. The reader or feature reader transformer would be the equivalent of your extract. And in many cases, the SQL executor can be that same thing. It allows you to write your SQL query and go out and query against the database, whether or not it's SQL Server or Oracle or Postgres or something like that. So the advantage to the SQL executor, as opposed to, say, the reader against the SQL database or the feature reader against the SQL database, is you can limit your data in the queries dramatically by writing that SQL the way you need it to be. Or you can even write joins and bring in different tables and bring your data out from that database in a much closer form than you would if you always sent it through, say, the feature reader.
That's, you nailed it, Mike. Yeah, with the feature reader or the reader, if you put a query on that, it's only doing a query to that one table. Whereas the SQL executor, as Mike said, you can paste in the most complicated SQL join query statement you want, and it'll all make that virtual table that exists as the output of the SQL executor. And that's generally a strategy when working with systems that support query that we promote at SAFE. It's push as much work to the data store as you can, and then let FME or data interoperability extension work with the residuals. That's much more efficient than reading whole tables and doing all the work in the data interop or FME. You can do that, and sometimes you have to do that. But if you have a query that works, then you can push the processing right to the database, which is great.
Yeah, Don got it exactly what we do. We will often use these queries to limit the data that we're pulling out, and it puts that query on the database and not on the client, so it tends to be a lot faster.
Yeah, and then you can leave FME, because sometimes you'll need to do queries across different databases. So you might have ArcGIS for your spatial, and then you might have Postgres or Oracle or some other database for your enterprise. And so with FME, then you can actually use FME to do a join across those by pulling some data out of your ArcGIS, if that's driving it, and then querying the information based on each record from your enterprise, or vice versa. Sometimes you might have customer data in your non-spatial database, and then you want to connect to ArcGIS, maybe to pull the lot boundaries or things like that. It's only in ArcGIS. So with FME, it's really easy to join across your different data sources. Yeah.
And then to go further with this ETL, where we have the load portion of it, of course, the transformer is the transformers and all the things that you can use to manipulate your data. This load is equivalent to the writer in the FME terminology, and that's what allows you to write your data to not the source, the destination where you're sending that data. I mentioned earlier the SQL executor, and that it's a little different because you can actually make it right. It runs your SQL query. So if you have an update query or a delete query, you can actually run that inside FME and make it execute your SQL in that case. Why would you want to do that? Why would you want to delete data in FME? What we often do with it is we will use FME to read data from different sources and then build out our query. So if you have a where clause, let's say you're selecting all of the parcels, and we want to update all of the parcels with a specific category, you can use FME to build that query with the category information and then execute that against the database. It's really handy when you're dealing with large data sets and large databases, because you can limit it to just what you need it to process.
Yeah.
Or maybe you have a lot of updates that you need to make, and each query is a little different. You can build out all your queries and then execute them through the SQL executor in that manner.
Yeah. And Mike and I are using the term database in a global fashion. It could mean data warehouse. It could mean anything that supports any kind of query language the SQL executor can use. So if you're using Neo4j or whatever, and you want to do a query against that, then you just paste in the Neo4j query language. If using DuckDB, then you would just paste in the DuckDB query language. There's no magic going on. FME is just taking whatever query you give it and sending it directly to the source, the system with the executor to do whatever you want. And also, as Mike said, the SQL executor can do anything. So you could delete records, you could insert records, you can do whatever you want.
Yeah, super powerful transformer.
Yeah.
Stephanie, you ready?
I'm ready. That's so great. I'm learning. I love learning new things. All right. Are y'all able to see the slides okay? I want to make sure I've got the screen share.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. So it's important to note that there is a difference between using the integrated FME workbench access within ArcGIS, the data interoperability extension, and then using FME desktop or FME form, which is a separate application. One obvious difference is that ArcGIS Pro only runs on Windows machines, not Macs or Linux. So that's going to limit your operating system. Also, it's not going to be the most up-to-date version of Workbench. It's going to be whatever version was available at the time of the release of your ArcGIS Pro version. But whatever version's used, you have access to support and free training. And I have to say, Safe Software's training is fantastic. It's free. It is a great resource. They host webinars, obviously, also trainings. If you're looking to get into using FME, you have a lot of support there to hit the ground running. So those are just some differences there.
Yeah, I'll probably just pipe in a little bit there. Yeah, the Esri and Safe work very closely to reduce the time, but the lag between ArcGIS data interoperability extensions. So anytime there is even a point release on ArcGIS data interoperability, we work to get updates in that for just updating systems, adding new systems, whatever that may be. So it's been a great relationship between Safe Software and Esri. And then we have lots of users on the data interoperability extension as we have on FME. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Yeah, and Mike, if you want to put the link to that training in the chat so everyone can access it. I will say I've been using the interop extension for several years, and I've been able to complete every workflow I've ever wanted to complete. Mm-hmm. So it's not like it's a limitation in any way.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, I put a link to academy.safe.com. I'm trying to find out if there's any open training for data interop. I'm not seeing anything. I swear Esri used to have some on their learn.arcgis.com, which is honestly, I love these articles that Esri has. They're quick and easy, but I don't see it on here anymore. So maybe they're updating them.
Yep. Yep. And if anybody has ArcGIS data interoperability extension, if you take form training, Stephanie made a great point. They're the same, right? And so anything you learn on how to learn FME form, it's going to work in the ArcGIS data interoperability extension. The things that don't work are obscure formats that for legal reasons we're not allowed to allow another vendor to sell, but that is it. So you don't have to worry that, oh, I'm taking FME form, I have the data interoperability extension, and so you're somehow, much of it is not going to apply. That is absolutely not the case. And ArcGIS data interoperability extension will also work with FME Flow as well. We have that. And if you do want a copy of FME form for training or learning, just let us know and we will get you one as well. Yeah, we don't want a license issue to ever get in the way of people learning.
That's really fantastic. Open access is really important.
Mm-hmm. A lot of these examples that we have here, Stephanie took what I had been working on and transposed it to work for her class. She would often take my FME desktop, a full-blown version, and transfer it into DataUp for her students, and she never had an issue with it. So it works well together. You can go back and forth.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a great point. That really is great.
All right, great. So Mike mentioned that he provides me with his workbenches, and I am so gracious for that because at Austin Community College in the GIS department, we teach a course on automating GIS workflows, and that includes FME. Through attending today's session, you, our attendees here, are gaining access to the course materials that we offer our students at the college. This is an open access website. It contains 3 topics of materials with slides, readings, exercises, all the data that you need, and there's even quizzes there to test your knowledge if you want to take the quiz. This is a free Google site. It's curated just for you. If you have any feedback on the website, I'm the author. I'm open to suggestions. I know there's always room for improvement. You can email me stephanie.long@austincc.edu. Let me know, give me feedback there. After completing those 3 topics, what I'm showing on the video right now is the project. So try your hand on the project. This is a Google document. It steps you through analyzing the equity of CapMetro's new Project Connect here in Austin by calculating z-scores using census demographic data. So you create a very advanced workbench with fancy math and generate your own map of your results. An example of that map can be seen here to the left of the video. If you complete the project, share it with me. I'd love to see your maps. I'd love to hear your results on that equity. You can scan the QR code there. That's going to take you to a website that will give you access to this course on FME and automating your workflows with FME. Mike, if you want to put the link to the Spatialty blog and those other links that are there in the slides in the chat, that would be great.
It's already there. And I'd like to point out that in this particular training that Stephanie has made, I was experimenting with calculating proportional demographics through FME to display it on some dashboards and different things like that. And Stephanie was impressed with that and took it to another level for her training and calculating z-scores and showing the power that you can do within FME, even for geospatial analysis. I think a lot of people think that FME is just for transforming your data and then loading it to where it needs to go. It really can do a lot with the expression evaluators, and there's a lot of different geometry calculators. You can do your analysis within FME. And in fact, most of the time I do, because I'm already working with my data to get it to the format that I need. I just continue using FME in that case. I write it to ArcGIS Enterprise and then display it and visualize it in there for my end users. It works out really well.
Yeah, so Mike is the subject matter expert, and then I'm the instructional designer. All right, and with that, many thanks to everyone for attending today. These QR codes will take you to my LinkedIn profile and Mike's LinkedIn profile. And I will say we are having a friendly competition to see who can get the most new connections today. If you want to scan those QR codes and help me be the winner.
Last time she did this and she never warned me, I pasted my URL in there and I won. So I'm not going to do that this time. Elizabeth, do we have time to start going through some of these questions that have been coming in?
Yeah, fantastic. So I think what we'll do now is just take the audience through a few resources, and then we should have, at least a few minutes at the end here to get to some questions live as well.
Okay, great.
But before we do that, Mike, I did have this slide here, just a sneak peek on our upcoming story with your company, CapMetro.
Yeah, we're going to be doing a customer story of how we're using using FME in conjunction with ArcGIS Enterprise, and we'll be publishing that up on SAFE's website. I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah,
it's exciting. It's a great story.
Yeah, so stay tuned for that, everyone. All right, and so briefly before we get into some resources here, if you are new to our company, Safe Software, we've been in the data game for over 30 years now, and as Dawn mentioned earlier, we have over 200,000 users worldwide that we work with across over 25,000 organizations. Yeah, and Dawn, I'm not sure if you wish to speak to this one, but our Gartner Peer Insights Voice of the Customer.
So thanks, Elizabeth. Yeah, so this is Gartner does some peer insights where they talk to customers of many companies who do similar things to us. And the top right is where you want to be, customer's choice, and Safe Software is a customer's choice. That list is in alphabetical order, so I wish we were like Aardvark software, because then we would be the top, but you can't control that. And so we're also recognized as the customer's choice in North America and for mid-size enterprises. And that's the other thing that separates us from all the others there, is we support both the real small organization all the way up to the large organization. Yeah.
Perfect. All right, and just our resources briefly here. Get our ebook Spatial Data for the Enterprise. We have a short link there. It's a free resource. And then we've chatted about this already, but I just want to note and highlight once again free instructor-led training via our academy. So there's that link once again to check out, as well as our knowledge base. It has lots of how-tos and knowledge articles there. And our webinar program. We do have some recently published upcoming webinars, so we encourage you to check those out, and you can register now. We also offer podcasts through EM360. So if you are interested in more audio-based learning, maybe on your commute to or from work, check that out. A couple of the more popular ones I've featured on the screen here, and those are available on demand. And our charitable grant program. So this is a bit of a plug before we have a webinar coming up on this in a few months' time. So Safe Software offers a grant program, and we figured it would be a good time to highlight that after we are featuring Stephanie as a professor here today on our webinar. So we offer our grants for both students and instructors, as well as other charitable organizations or initiatives.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of next steps, if you do wish to chat with us about anything data, we're here to help. This webinar today is really just the tip of the iceberg. I will also promote on the stage now a handy dandy button. So if you do wish to reach out to us, you can click that and start an email. We'd love to help you get started. And then as well, our FME Accelerator course. It is 90 minutes free of charge, and it's a great place to continue your learning journey and get the basics of FME. And our community badge code. So if you're a member of our FME community, you can redeem that as a thank you for joining us here today. And if you're yet to become a member, we encourage you to check it out. It's a great place to network with other users. And lastly, before we get to a couple questions more here, our peak of data integration. I know that our call for presentations is currently open, so we encourage you to apply now. All levels of FME proficiency are welcome there, and there's a couple different length options as well. And our registration opens in just a few weeks' time, Dawn, so that's exciting.
Yeah, it is, and it's in Seattle this year, so we're doing it in the US, so we're really excited about that. We expect on the order of 2,000 people. And so, everybody, we'd love to see you and talk data integration.
Fantastic. All right, at this point, I will ask if our presenters want to turn back on their webcams and we can take a look over a few questions here. I know we got a lot of awesome questions in, and we've gotten to a lot already.
Yeah, Dawn and I have been trying to answer these as they're coming in as best we can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so lots of great questions about compatibility between data interop and FME and SQL queryers. Somebody found a link that didn't work, so I'll make sure I send that to the marketing group, because we've just been in a big rebrand. And
I'd see a question I'd like to go ahead and answer. I'll go ahead and hit start live answer. How do I create a new feature layer in ArcGIS server with FME? I'm going to assume that you mean ArcGIS Enterprise and you have ArcGIS Server as part of that configuration, because the feature layers really aren't part of ArcGIS Server. Let's go with the ArcGIS Enterprise, where you have Portal for ArcGIS and all the components of that. You would use the writer or the feature writer, and you would use the Portal option. And there's a setting in there that says create new feature layer. And when you publish that, it's actually going to create a new hosted feature layer within Portal. It's super easy. I do this daily. It is the main way that we take data around the agency, turn it into spatial information, and then we publish it into ArcGIS Enterprise. So we have a ton of hosted feature layers, and it works really well. Stephanie or Dawn, did you want to add anything to that?
No, that was great. Okay. And there's been a few questions on form, like how does FME flow fit into FME form? And I think Mike and Stephanie answered that. Form is where what you've seen, all the screen images you've seen are form or data interoperability extension. That's where you build all your solutions start to form. And then Mike gave a great example of flow, where you could use a directory watcher to watch a directory. And then when a file is changed or updated or created, then that triggers an operation. And that's one of many types of automations that you can do within Flow. It also, you can use it to tie systems together. So, you can tie CityWorks into Maximo, or you name it. That's where you can watch S3 buckets as well, just like a directory watcher. So it's all about automatically triggering your workflow rather than you having to manually do it. Yeah. So, yeah.
And I'd like to add in that if you think of Pro publishing to ArcGIS Enterprise, FME Form publishes to FME Flow. So you build it in the desktop and then you publish it to the server in both of those instances. And then that's how you run it, scheduled or with some sort of event like the directory watcher, things like that.
I'd like to bring another question out for a live answer. And I think Mike can speak to this because, Mike, you are an FME certified professional. So
I
we have
am.
an attendee wondering if anyone can give an overview of that exam.
I'm going to be honest, and Dawn can add into this. It looks like it's changed since I got it. So when I first got it, you went onto their website and you just answered the questions. And I'll admit, it took me 3 times to get through it because the questions are very particular about the wording that you use. And so when I did it, it was open book. I did it on my time. It looks like it's changed a little bit and that there's a testing service like the way Esri does it, where when you're getting certified. But I would expect that it's the same thing, that you need to make sure you have your terminology correct and you're thinking about it. I've actually been studying recently to take some of the Esri certifications, and I found that ChatGPT is really good at helping you to study. You can take the page, paste it in the ChatGPT, and then ask it to give you multiple choice questions on those. It does good for a while. After a few questions, it does start to get a little confused. I guess that's the hypnosis or whatever they're calling it. And so you have to ask it again and get it to start over its thing, but it does a good job.
Well, there's a new tool called Notebook LM that does a really good job. I would suggest testing that out. It's relatively new from Google.
Okay.
You can paste everything in and it will give you a study guide. It will quiz you. It will generate FAQs. I tested it out on something and it worked pretty well.
Yeah, and we do have, as Mike alluded to, we have a proctoring service. We try to make it as automated as possible. And that is, over time, we're trying to make that more flexible so it doesn't be so dependent on the terminology, but that's a work in progress. But yeah, you can find that from the community, I believe. Yeah, Elizabeth, we can send that out too.
Here's one. So this person's asking specific training sessions on FME with data distribution between enterprise geodatabase to ArcGIS Online. So I don't know of any specific training, but I don't think you need specific training. Once you have the general idea of how to take data from one place, transform it to what you need, and then put it into another place, it doesn't really matter where you're putting it. In most situations, it's the same. You're just changing that format, maybe setting up a few little things with the writer's attributes and making sure the names are correct for that particular format. But generally, it's not a huge difference. And I do this as well, taking data from ArcGIS Enterprise or the Enterprise Geodatabase and putting it up into AGO, and it's pretty easy. I don't have any issues with it at all. SAFE has done a great job of kind of masking all the complexity behind the scenes. Once you choose that writer format, it does it for you. It knows what to do for you. So you don't have to worry about what's going on in the background. You just have to worry about getting your data in the format you need.
Yeah. And that's, yeah. So our training in FME is we try to do it such that we're focusing on the data manipulation in the middle and trying, as Mike alluded to, trying to make the input and output format that you have to know as little as possible about the specifics of how to write to that stuff.
Stephanie, do you see anything you want to answer?
I don't think so. It looks like most of the questions have been answered.
Great. Awesome. So thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'll just notice what's a good time. If you do have any questions that come in after the webinar, of course, do feel free to reach out to us, contact us at info@safe.com. And yeah, if we weren't able to get to your question live, we'll definitely be sure to follow up by email as well.
Great.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, with I just want to say a huge thank you to our guest speakers today, Stephanie and Mike. Thanks so much for your time and joining and preparing this content to share with us.
Yeah, we really appreciate it. And thanks to everybody who spent an hour with us. We really appreciate it. We know everybody is super busy. And so thank you so much for that. And thank you, Elizabeth, for keeping us all on task, and particularly me. And it's great.
My pleasure. All right. Awesome.
Okay.
So bye for now, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Have a great rest of your day.